Lettuce is a powerhouse plant to grow. It has a long growing season from April to October. It's super easy to grow from seed, and it saves you a ton of money from not having to buy it at the grocery store. Today I'm going to take you through how to grow lettuce from seed to harvest, so come with me. What's up? My name is Bree from Urban Gardening Canada. I garden in Ottawa Zone 5, and I'm here to teach you how to grow lettuce from seed. So the first thing that you want to know is that lettuce is a cool season crop, which means it thrives the best in spring and fall, but it doesn't mean that you can't be growing it in the summer. There are some varieties that do better in the heat than others, so if you do want to grow it all season long, make sure that you have a selection of varieties that can do well in both temperatures. One of the things that's amazing about lettuce is it's super fast from seed to harvest, anywhere from 45 to 75 days, and buying a package of seeds is super cheap. It's about $3 for a package of romaine, and you can get 1,200 seeds from it, which is a whole lot of lettuce. If you plant it in successions every 2 weeks, you can have endless salad greens from April through October, which is amazing. Lettuce is one of those crops that makes me feel like a superhero gardener, that I'm just such a good gardener, because when I can fill up a salad spinner or my salad bowl full of homegrown veggies, it just makes me feel incredible. So when buying your seeds or your seedlings, you may want to know that there are 3 very common types of lettuce. So there is head lettuce, which would be your iceberg style lettuce. There's romaine lettuce, which you get from the grocery store. And then there's loose leaf lettuce, which you oftentimes see in salad mixes in those plastic clamshells or at a farmer's market. Those are a loose leaf salad. When we first started gardening, I didn't know that there were different types of lettuce varieties, and so I just bought seeds that looked cool, and it seemed that all of the seed packets I bought were loose leaf lettuce, so they were just like the small like salad mix greens, and for the life of me I could not understand why they didn't grow into like, you know, butter head lettuce or romaine like you saw at the grocery store. I was like, why does none of my lettuce grow to the right size? Why doesn't it look like the grocery store? Like, I just like could not figure it out. And then I stumbled on an article years ago that told me about how there's technically 4 different types of lettuce, but the 3 common ones, the romaine, the head, and the loose leaf. And it was like a eureka moment. But it took me years to figure out that there were different varieties. It was an interesting time in my life. Okay, so if you want to start seeds indoors and get them out nice and early, you can be planting 3 to 4 weeks before your last frost date, which means you should be starting your seeds indoors 8 to 10 weeks before your last frost date. The nice part is that if your lettuce gets too big before you plant it out, you can always eat it inside. It's a very easy plant to grow indoors as well, and so you really can't start your lettuce too early. So historically for me, when I've planted lettuce out, I actually don't follow the typical hardening off process that you do with your peppers and your tomato plants. I do actually just throw mine straight outside, and so they do get a little bit of shock and they grow a little slower at first, but they do pick up. So lettuce can handle temperatures below 0, about -4, -5 Celsius, under cover. They do not enjoy frost. They will die from frost. Make sure they're growing under cover. And so they won't grow at those temperatures, but they will survive. So if your nights are below 0, at the -5 or warmer mark, it's fine. And when the daytimes rise to 5-10 degrees, your lettuce will start to grow. And so I plant mine out early, because then as soon as the temperatures start warming up, the lettuce starts growing faster and I'm ahead of everybody else. And so I always recommend getting your plants out early. So one thing to remember is, even if your daytimes are only 5 degrees, when they're growing under cover and the sun is out, there's a lot of heat that comes under that cover. And so it may be 5 degrees outside, but it can get 10-15 degrees underneath your cover. And if you're growing it inside of a covered greenhouse that's against your house wall, it's going to be even warmer, because there is going to be some of that temperature that's coming through the walls of your house. And so although the temperature looks cold, it's not necessarily as cold under cover. You can buy thermometers that have the dual, so it'll tell you the low and the high of the day, that often are used in greenhouses. And so you could always invest in one of those and see what the temperatures are looking like under your cover. I'll put a link to one of these below, so that way you understand what I'm talking about and you can decide if you want to invest in one. So once the spring planting has passed, you do want to grow in the summertime too. So every 2 to 3 weeks, you can sprinkle some more seeds around. And then when fall time comes, you're going to follow the exact same rules, except you're going to do it with your last frost date. And so you're going to want to start your lettuce around the end of August. So you have about 6 weeks time before your last frost date, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to plant in a garden that allows for cover, so whether it be a cold frame or a garden that you can add a poly cover to make a hoop house, because your lettuce is going to grow into September and October, but you can actually prolong your harvest if you're growing it under cover. So even if your first frost comes, then you just throw the poly over top of it, and the frost won't even affect it, and you'll continue to grow your lettuce into November, depending on how cold or how warm the season is. Planting lettuce is super duper easy. You don't want to bury it too deep. Wherever the line is between the bottom of your lettuce and the roots, you're just going to want to plant that exactly the same in your garden. And for spacing, it depends on your personal preference and the variety that you're growing. A loose leaf lettuce can be planted way closer together. An iceberg lettuce, you do want to leave, if you think about the iceberg that you buy from the grocery store, how large it is, you just want to make sure that you leave enough gap between all of your plants that they can get to that full size without being crowded out. With romaine, I like to plant them really close together because they have that upright, so they go about 4 to 6 inches apart from each other. I cram mine in because I do more of a cut and come again method versus harvesting the whole head. And so to me, I will just harvest the outer leaves to give more space to each of the plants, so that way I can pack more into my garden, since my gardens aren't that large. So to maintain your lettuce plants, there isn't really much that you have to worry about. Slugs might eat the leaves of it, so you do want to keep an eye out for that, but otherwise the pests are really not that intense for lettuce. The things that you do want to worry about is making sure that you water it enough, since lettuce is made up of so much water, so you do want to make sure that you're watering them regularly. And the other thing is heat. They really hate heat, and so if you're growing it in the middle of summer and you are getting a heat wave, 35 degrees Celsius or warmer, you do want to cover them in shade cloth. What I do is I keep my hoops up all year long, so I use the hoops for poly in the winter, spring, and fall, and in the summertime I leave those hoops up so I can put shade cloth over top of my garden, so anything like lettuce or kale or dill or cilantro that are more of a cool season crop, I can shade them out to just help cool it a little bit from that beating hot sun that comes in the middle of summer. I personally don't recommend fertilizing lettuce because I just don't think it's necessary. Some people might tell you to do it, but I just don't think it's necessary. So I like to garden with the lowest effort possible, and so your choice, but in my opinion, fertilizing isn't required. So now when it comes to harvesting your lettuce, there are 2 methods that you could do in order to harvest your lettuce. The first one is to do the cut and come again method, which is you leave the whole plant in the ground and you just cut off the outer leaves of the plant and leave it growing in there. And so this is good for loose leaf lettuce or romaine lettuce, where you just keep on harvesting the outer leaves of the head of romaine. If you're growing a head lettuce such as iceberg or butter lettuce, you don't really want to harvest in this method because you're trying to grow that head in the middle of it the way you would with a cabbage. And so with that method, you would just harvest the entire plant once it's grown to maturity. And so you can do this too with romaine. You can grow the full head of romaine and then chop it off depending on how much lettuce you need, but this just helps prolong your harvest. And then with the head lettuces, you'll just chop the whole thing off and take it indoors to eat the whole thing. And so finally, if your lettuce has been in the garden for the whole season, or if it gets really hot out, it might bolt, which means your lettuce is going to seed. It's really obvious for plants like romaine because they start getting taller, and so what you'll see is a stalk forming where the leaves would normally be growing. All of a sudden your plant stretches out and gets taller, and that's because it's forming a flower stalk. And this is often what happens when you have a really hot summer where it had been cool and all of a sudden you had a heat wave. Your plants are going to bolt because they think it's the end of the season. And so once that flower stalk starts happening, you have 2 choices. You can either pull out your plant and you can eat it. However, there is a chance that the leaves will be bitter on it. The moment your plant starts going to seed, it often tastes bitter, but if you catch it early enough, it's totally fine to eat. You might also taste a texture difference if it gets a little tougher, but still it's totally safe to eat. Your second option is to allow your lettuce to go to seed, and I only recommend doing this if you had a nice long harvest of your plant. But if you didn't get much off of it and it went to seed prematurely, do not save those seeds, because the new seeds will do the exact same thing. And so if you had a nice long harvest off your plant, what it will do is it will send up a big stalk, and it will put out these really pretty yellow flowers that the smaller pollinators love. And once they are done flowering, they will turn into these long, thin seed heads. And once those are brown and dried out, those seeds are good to be saved for next year. And that's everything for growing lettuce from seed to harvest. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.